Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this beautiful Boubou Kaftan here. This Boubou is so beautiful and so classic and giving all the vibes it's supposed to give. If this looks like something you're interested in, kindly watch the video to the end and don't forget to like my video, share and subscribe. Thank you. To make this Boubou gown, we'll need Mikado fabric, and then this is what I bought for the embellishments. I don't know what this is called, but I bought 2 yards and then I got 1 tassel. For the fabric, it's 4 yards. Okay, I don't know, we exhausted it at the end anyway, so 4 yards. Now you know Mikado comes in by 60, and then on this other side we have the yardage, right? So now you're going to be folding your fabric using the yardage, that is the number of yards that you bought. That's what you measure for the length of the boubou, because there is no shoulder joining. Okay, so now my Boubou Kaftan is length 62, so you can see I'm measuring out that length 62 there, and then I'll just put a notch there, and then I'll go to the other side of the yardage again, the other side with the length of the yardage, and then I'm going to measure out the same 62 inches, which is the full length of the Boubou Kaftan that we are making, and I'll also put a notch there too. Okay, alright, so now that I have my notch on both sides of the fabric, I'm going to be folding that side, okay, into 2, so that I can have my 62 inches length on both twice. That is like to have the fabric unfold 62 on 2 sides, and that's going to serve for my front and for my back length. Okay, alright, so this is it. I decided to turn it the other way because I had excess and I wanted the one with length 62 to be on top, so that I won't have to be struggling to locate where the full length of my gown will be. Okay, and now that I've folded it, you can see that I put the place with the 2 notches together, and you can see that my shoulder has no opening there, so that means that shoulder is secure, there's no joining, and you can see where I have the full length of the gown. Okay, now our fabric is ready and it's time for us to start marking. The first thing I'm going to be marking is my neckline. Now I'm working with 4 inches neckline, that's the width. For the back depth, I'm going to be using 1 inch. Okay, I will just mark this now, and then we're going to cut out later. We're not cutting the neckline immediately. And for the front, I'm using 4 inches width, and the neckline is supposed to be, the depth for the front is supposed to be 8 inches, but I marked out 7.5. That's because when I sew it, I'm definitely going to arrive at my 8 inches. Okay, now the next marking I'm doing is my bust line measurement. Yes, that's where I'm going to be imputing the measurement for the bust circumference. Alright, and at the tip here is going to be where we're going to have our sleeve. So I decided not to mark that 11 inches there, and just leave there for when I'm ready to bring the sleeve measurement there. Okay, alright, coming back to the shoulder, my shoulder measurement is 8 inches. Now you remember this Boubou Kaftan is going to have a pleat on the shoulder, so I'm deciding what I just decided to measure what I have left, and you can see it's 21 and a half. So from here now, I'm going to have the length of my sleeve, and I'm also going to have a pleat on the shoulder. So I decided to determine how many length I'm going to have, how many inches my pleat is going to be. Now for the sleeve, I want the sleeve opening to be 12 inches wide, and then I decided to add 1 more inch for the seam allowance, which is going to be there. So I have a total of 13 inches there. Coming back to the bust line, which we already ruled out there. Now what I did for my bust measurement was, the bust I'm working with is bust 42. So I went ahead and multiplied the bust by 2, which gave me 84. Now this 84, I went ahead and then divided it by 4. And then I arrived at 21 inches for the bust circumference. I then added 2 inches extra for seam allowance. That's like the side seam joining there. So that gave me 23 inches, and then I decided to just curve that into the sleeve where I have the sleeve measurement there. Coming to the length of the boubou now, I used the hip circumference, and the hip circumference I'm working with is hip 44. So just like I did for the bust, I went ahead and multiplied the hip circumference by 2, and that became 88. 88 divided by 4 gave me 22. Now that 22 plus 2 inches, I arrived at 24, but I decided to use 25 anyway. So you can see that I'm marking 25 all the way up. I'm going to mark it all the way up to a little closer to where I have my bust circumference measurement there. Okay, at this point you can see I decided to join with a straight line. Can you see what I'm doing now? Okay, now that I have that, you come back to your sleeve and that armhole point there and create a curve there. You're not supposed to have it that sharp, okay, which is what you can see there. Now coming to the edge of the sleeve there, you want to go in by either 0.5 or by 1. This is so that you can have that curve there. Alright, now that we're done, the next thing will be for us to cut out. Yes, so I'll go ahead now and cut this out. Okay, we're done cutting, and the next thing is for me to unpin. The next thing we're going to be doing is to cut out the neckline. Alright, okay, so this is me trying to get off all the fraying part there, mercado frills. Okay, alright, so it's time to cut the neckline. I wanted opening it at first, but I decided to cut out the back neckline before opening it up, because you have to open it up to cut the front neckline. Alright, and now that I'm done with the back, the next thing will be to open it up like so. You want to separate the back from the front, so at this point you decide where to use for your back and where to use for the front. They are basically the same thing. Alright, but since I have my front neckline marking on this side, I decided to use that for the front. Okay, so now you can see, now that I have it straight, you just go ahead and separate it like so, then place it on fold again. Can you see? You have to be careful so that you don't ruin the neckline of your outfit. Okay, and then make sure that it's lying flat and aligns with the back. So you just go ahead and cut it out like so. Okay. Alright, so at this point you have your back neckline and your front neckline, and at the same time you don't have any joining on your shoulder. Can you see? Okay, so this is what we have. I'm just trying to arrange it so you can see the neckline properly. Alright, so can you see? This is what we have. Alright, so moving forward now, the next thing we're going to determine will be the pleats we need to have on the shoulder. Remember, our neckline our shoulder has been marked as 8 inches already. Okay, now from that 8 inches I'm going to go in further by 5 inches before my pleat. I want to have that 5 inches there before the pleat. And remember, I already said I have excess of 6 inches for the shoulder pleat, so that is why I marked 3 inches on twice there, 3 to have 6, to have that 6 there. And then you see the way I made that fold there. So that's how you're going to create the pleat. But I decided to just open it up so as to make it easy for you to understand. Okay, so you see I marked out 3 inches. Can you see? And then, alright, at this point I realized I was doing it on the wrong side, and we're supposed to do this on the right side so that we can pleat it once and for all. Now remember, our neckline is our shoulder rather is 8 inches. Okay, and from that 8 inches I want to have 5 inches gap there before my pleat, and my pleat is supposed to be 6 inches. That 6 inches I divided it by 2, and that's why I have 3 on each side of that line. And then I went ahead to pick the middle mark there, and then I aligned the other 2 points to make sure they meet there. Should be easy. Alright, and you can see that we have our pleat on the shoulder. The next thing you want to do now is to secure it with your pressing iron. Okay, you want to press it down so that your pleat there is secured. And then you're going to determine, you need to stitch it down so that your pleat will stick and remain. So you have to determine the length of your stitch. For me, I'm going to sew it down to a little below the armhole, but if you don't want to have a stitch there, you can just stitch the shoulder a little, but that means you're going to work with lots of pressing so as to keep it secured and not open up later. At the same time, it depends on what you're trying to achieve anyway. Okay, so this is it, and I'm ironing it. At this point I'm okay, and I want to repeat the same thing for the second shoulder. Alright, so remember our shoulder was 8 inches, the neckline was 4, then that's why I marked 4 from the neckline, and then I marked another 5, then 3. You pick the middle, then make sure those other points are together like so. Can you see? And then you just put it together like this and create your pleat. Then you go ahead and secure with your pressing iron again. Can you see? Okay, so now we're done. The next thing will be for us to cut out the facing for our neckline. Alright, so I came with the remaining Mikado fabric, the one we have left from the 4 yards we bought, and this is what I just did. I just placed it under, then I placed the neckline on top. Alright, then you're going to align it and make sure that you have enough fabric on both sides of the shoulder so that you can have what to use there. And then I just went ahead to trace out the neckline. I traced out the neckline to the fabric I have under. Okay, can you see? Alright, now that I'm done, I'll go ahead now and just remove the dress. Can you see? And then I'll go ahead and mark out the facing. I want the facing to be like 3.5 inches wide, so I marked 4 inches, then I added half inch allowance for turning off that side. Okay, so that when I turn the neckline and I also turn the edge of the facing, I'm going to be left with 3.5 inches wideness for my facing. Okay, alright, now coming to that pointy side of the neckline, I used where we have the V shape, I marked out 5 inches. This is just to enable us have that pointy edge there. Alright, nothing much. Alright, so we'll go ahead now and just cut it out. Okay, so now that you have your facing, just make a notch in the middle there, and then from there you can have access to cut out your neckline. Okay, alright, so our neck facing is ready. I'll come with the gown now and make sure that I have the right side up. Okay, so this is the right side of the gown, and then I will make sure that I place the right side of the facing. Okay, this is just like right side facing right side. Can you see? And then when I have it well placed, I'll go ahead and secure with pins. Remember, you're sewing your neckline on 1/2 inch, and then the side you just need to turn it. You don't need to turn it twice, just once, and then sew that down also. Alright guys, so this is the neckline. Can you see? It's done. And then also this is the wrong side. You're going to, after sewing, you're going to turn it in and give it a good press. You also want to go ahead and secure with hemming gum, alright, so that it lays flat. Okay, so coming back to where we have the pleats on the shoulder, can you see? Because we ironed it the first time, immediately I just flipped the sleeve over. You can see we have this line there. Now this line is going to be your guide. It's going to help you in stitching down, that's like sewing down your pleat. Okay, so remember I said I'm going to sew my own up to a little below armhole, so that's why I'm showing you. So I'll go ahead now, do this and come back to show you. Alright guys, can you see? This is what I have. Remember I told you you can just secure with a little stitch on the shoulder if you don't want to sew it all the way down. Okay, now because I don't want mine to lay flat like this, I want it to have some form of bulkiness like I have just below the armhole there. I'm going to open it up this way, can you see? And then I'm going to press out that line there and make sure I don't have that line there. I just want it a little fuller than this. I don't want it to lay flat like this. Okay, that being that, the next thing is to close up our side seam. You can see that our Boubou Kaftan is coming together. Okay, so the next thing is to sew both sides of the seam line. Whatever allowance you added, this is the time to take it out. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and do that for mine, and then come back to show you what I have. Don't forget to give it a good press when you're done, both on the seam allowance inside and on the outside as well. Alright guys, so this is it. This is what I have. Our kaftan is ready. The next thing now is just for us to hem the sleeve edge, and as well as the edge of the hem of the boubou. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and do this. All you need to do is just to fold it twice like so. Can you see? Just like that, and then hem all around for both the sleeve and the hem of the boubou. Okay, so this is what we have. Can you see? And this is it for the sleeve as well. Alright, the next thing now is for us to attach our embellishment for the neckline, and this is it. So you want to determine the length you'll be working with. For me, since this is 2 yards, I decided to make use of 18 inches. Okay, and then this is how I fixed it. I made it to go a little behind the neckline, the shoulder rather, so that they don't get to see where the embellishment started from. Okay, and then I measured my 18 inches, and this is where I have that. Okay, so I'm trying to arrange that now and measure once again. Okay, so this is it, and then I went ahead to cut out. Okay, so at this point I'm going to be using this one to determine for the others. So what you want to do now is to either secure this with, first you either want to secure this with maybe candle wax gum, or you use what we call your fabric gum, or you use what we, yes, I think those are the 2 options you have. After using the gum, I'll recommend you hand tack, okay, so as to keep it in place. Alright, so this is what we have at the end of the day. Can you see? I also went ahead to fix the tassels. Can you see? Looking so beautiful. Thank you so much for watching up to this point. Thank you. So please like my video, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you.